as I've always said, and I will always continue to say, that riots are socially destructive and self-defeating. I'm still convinced that non-violence is the most potent weapon available to oppress people in their struggle for freedom and justice. I feel that violence will only create more social problems than they will solve, and that in a real sense it is impractical for the Negro to even think of mounting a violent revolution in the United States. So I will continue to condemn riots and continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way. Continue to affirm that there is another way. But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities as it is for me to condemn riots. I think America must see that riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice, equality, and humanity. And so in a real sense, our nation's summers of riots are caused by our nation's winters of delay. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again. Social justice and progress are the absolute guarantors of riot prevention.
Good afternoon, Internet friendos, and welcome to another episode of Life According to Joel. I would like to start this video by saying I am exercising my Section 2 of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Charter Rights, which is the right to peaceful assembly here in the great country of Canada, where we still have democracy. So I'm going to be doing so in accordance with provincial guidelines, which state that I should remain 6 feet away from other individuals. I have brought a mask that I will be wearing, and I will be complying with our provincial regulations, and I will not be breaking any laws. That said, I feel that it is important to come out today because it is a Black Vancouver event, not a Black Lives Matter event. And I do want to add, Black Lives Matter did not condone or approve the event that is happening today. However, I think it is still important to stand in solidarity with our American brothers and sisters to the South in discussing racial injustices in North America. And so I think it's important to be here, and I'm here, and I'm going to be videotaping because there's been a lot of agitators in the United States, and supposedly there are agitators here in Canada that are linked to the Ku Klux Klan and other white supremacist organizations that are trying to embed themselves inside peaceful protests. So I think it's important for all of us as allies to show up with cameras and make sure that if there are violent white people trying to disrupt peaceful protests, that we catch that on video. If there are violent people of other ethnic groups or races, catch that on video too. But in my opinion, some violence or some civil disobedience is justified. Anyways, let's get on with the event, shall we? Yeah. So here we are at the Black Vancouver rally. This wasn't organized by Black Lives Matter, it's Black Vancouver, but turnout's good. Much as in the United States, Black Lives Matter has been extremely responsible here in Canada. Black Lives Matter did not call for a rally today because of COVID-19. They asked their members to remain home or to remain a 6-foot distance away from other people, to be responsible, to not be violent, to not loot. They were extremely responsible here in Vancouver, and I applaud them for that. I did feel that because Black Vancouver did organize a rally, that it was still important for me to come out as an ally and show my support to my American brothers and sisters in the African community, African American community. And why do I think that is so important? There has been 400 years of racial injustice in the States, and there has been a lot of racism here in Canada, not as widespread, not as systematic, not as institutionalized, but it's still here. And I think it's important as a European American, a European Canadian, to address the issues that we have in our society, both here in Canada, but as well as in the United States. So that's why I'm here. And as you can see, 1,000 other Canadians or so agree with me in coming out and supporting the African American community. And it is really beautiful to see. It is really beautiful. Down in the States, it's really there is systematic racism that is built into their society. So 400 years ago, at the end of the slave trade, slaves were not given reparations. They were just tossed out of their farms, and so they weren't able to make any income or revenue. The United States then institutionalized Jim Crow laws, which forced African American communities to be segregated away from the other communities, and this kept the poverty perpetual. You have situations like down in Tulsa, where a black community was beginning to thrive, and it was completely obliterated. This systematic attempt to keep African Americans impoverished as well as uneducated. So that's another thing. In the U.S., schools are funded or defunded based on test scores, while impoverished communities tend to have lower test scores because those children are under more stress and they're not able to perform as well in school. And so you have this perpetual racism that is enforced through classism that has been going on for quite some time. And I'm law enforcement trained. There is racial profiling in law enforcement, and that's based on crime statistics. And there's a direct link between poverty, lack of education, and crime. And so as you can see, that system is completely designed to self-perpetuate itself. And it's impossible to break unless you address the underlying cause, which is African Americans deserve reparations. They deserve proper educations, and there needs to be an attempt to desegregate communities and ensure that the communities that African Americans are growing up in are inclusive and that they're seen as equals as everybody else around them. It is so important to acknowledge the institutionalization of racism in the United States, and that simply ending police brutality isn't the answer, but it is a good start. And so why is it important to focus on that and the fact that there are a bunch of white supremacist groups in the United States that are trying to actually increase police brutality and violence against the black community? And hear me out for a second. If you are a white person and you are at a peaceful Black Lives Matter rally, and Black Lives Matter has asked for that rally to remain peaceful and has asked for you as an ally to support your African brothers and sisters in marching down the street peacefully, and then you grab a Molotov cocktail and you throw it at a squad car to provoke a police response, you're not an ally. Because when those police return fire with tear gas and rubber bullets, you, little white person, get to go back to your safe house. Well, the people being gassed and shot in the streets for your violence don't. So while I support the African American community in being violent, not necessarily being violent, but tossing a Molotov cocktail is understandable. You're angry, pissed off. There's 400 years of injustice. Whitey there? No. No. And I'm sorry, you're not an ally. And to all my white friends calling for violence online, you're not being allies. Black Lives Matter said they want peace, and you are silencing African American voices for your own benefit. Have a great day, guys.